Lassie Farm with the second episode of the Arabian Nights short story of the merchant and the demon. And to give you an idea how old this book is, it was first translated into English in 1706, and it existed long before that. It's a collection of folk tales. So from where we left off, it is related, O wise and happy king, that when the demon raised his sword, the merchant asked the demon again, "Must you kill me?" And the demon replied, "Yes." Then the merchant said, "Please give me time to say goodbye to my wife and family and children, divide my property among them, and appoint guardians. Then I shall come back so that you may kill me." The demon replied, "I'm afraid that if I release you and grant you time, you will go and do what you wish, but will not come back." The merchant said, "I swear to keep my pledge to come back, as the God of heaven and earth is my witness." The demon asked, "How much time do you need?" The merchant replied, 1 year, so that I may see enough of my children, bid my wife goodbye, discharge my obligations to people, and come back on New Year's Day. The demon asked, "Do you swear to God that if I let you go, you will come back on New Year's Day?" The merchant replied, "Yes, I swear to God." After the merchant swore, the demon released him, and he mounted his horse sadly and went on his way. He journeyed until he reached his home and came to his wife and children. When he saw them, he wept bitterly, and when his family saw his sorrow and grief, they began to reproach him for his behavior, and his wife said, "Husband, what is the matter with you? Why do you mourn when we are happy, celebrating your return?" He replied, "Why not mourn when I only have 1 year to live?" Then he told her of his encounter with the demon and informed her that he had sworn to return on New Year's Day so that the demon might kill him. When they heard what he said, everyone began to cry. His wife struck her face in lamentation and cut her hair. His daughters wailed and his little children cried. It was a day of mourning, as all the children gathered around their father to weep and exchange goodbyes. The next day, he wrote his will, dividing his property, discharged his obligations to people, left bequests and gifts, distributed alms, and engaged reciters to read portions of the Quran in his house. Then he summoned legal witnesses and in their presence freed his slaves and slave girls, divided among his elder children their shares of the property, appointed guardians for his little ones, and gave his wife her share according to the marriage contract. He spent the rest of the time with his family, and when the year came to an end, save for the time needed for the journey, he performed his ablutions, performed his prayers, and, carrying his burial shroud, began to bid his family goodbye. His sons hung around his neck, his daughters wept, and his wife wailed. Their mourning scared him, and he began to weep as he embraced and kissed his children goodbye. He said to them, "Children, this is God's will and decree, for man was created to die." Then he turned away and, mounting his horse, journeyed day and night until he reached the orchard on New Year's Day. He sat at the place where he had eaten the dates, waiting for the demon with a heavy heart and tearful eyes. As he waited, an old man leading a deer on a leash approached and greeted him, and he returned the greeting. The old man inquired, "Friend, why do you sit here in this place of demons and devils? For in this haunted orchard none come to good." The merchant replied by telling him what had happened to him and the demon from beginning to end. The old man was amazed at the merchant's fidelity and said, "Yours is a magnificent pledge," adding, "By God, I shall not leave until I see what happens to you with the demon." Then he sat down beside him and chatted with him, and they talked. As the merchant and the man with the deer sat talking, another old man approached with 2 black hounds. And when he reached them, he greeted them, and they returned his greeting. Then he asked them about themselves, and the man with the deer told him the story of the merchant and the demon, and how the merchant had sworn to return on New Year's Day, and how the demon was waiting to kill him. He added that when he himself heard the story, he swore never to leave until he saw what would happen between the merchant and the demon. When the man with the 2 dogs heard the story, he was amazed, and he too swore never to leave them until he saw what would happen between them. Then he questioned the merchant, and the merchant repeated to him what had happened with the demon. While they were engaged in conversation, a 3rd man approached and greeted them, and they returned his greeting. He asked, "Why do I see the 2 of you sitting here with this merchant between you, looking abject, sad, and dejected?" They told him the merchant's story and explained that they were sitting and waiting to see what would happen to him with the demon. When he heard the story, he sat down with them, saying, "By God, I too, like you, will not leave until I see what happens to this man with the demon." As they sat conversing with one another, they suddenly saw the dust rising from the open country, and when it cleared, they saw the demon approaching with a drawn steel sword in his hand. He stood before them without greeting them, yanked the merchant with his left hand, holding him fast before him, said, "Get ready to die." The merchant and the 3 old men began to weep and wail. And we'll leave it there for now.